So I want to start off with a bit of a question for you. Have you ever found yourself treating like moments of really profound inspiration like an entertaining circus act rather than an actual genuine call to action?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a deliberately uncomfortable question right out of the gate
I know, I know.
because it really just immediately forces us to, look in the mirror.
Exactly. And today we are basically staring down a masterclass in human psychology and, well, spiritual conviction, but it's completely disguised as a sermon.
Right.
So for today's deep dive, we are unpacking this highly thought-provoking message by Pastor Befekadu Atmaw from the Halwat Emmanuel Church.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating source.
It is. The message is originally an Amharic sermon titled, the English translation is If It Is You, and it uses that classic biblical story of Peter walking on water as a foundation.
Right, but the core tension we're actually unpacking here is that stark difference between being a passive spectator in your own life versus, genuinely stepping out into the impossible.
Yeah. And to understand that tension, we have to honestly look at how we, as humans, typically approach sources of profound wisdom. Or even the divine, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, we rarely approach with a blank slate.
Never.
We always come in with this highly specific, very self-centered agenda. Like, we show up with our personal shopping lists, just hoping the divine will act as some sort of cosmic handyman.
Yes, a cosmic handyman. That is the perfect way to put it.
Right. For whatever immediate crisis we happen to perceive as our biggest problem that day.
We want our specific massive issues fixed, and we want them fixed on our exact timeline. But the sermon points out something really interesting, which is that God often speaks to what he knows is genuinely necessary.
Which is usually not what's on the list.
Exactly. Sometimes that means he completely ignores our immediate shopping list in favor of a much greater, overarching purpose.
And we see this play out perfectly in how people reacted to the miracles of Jesus. Like, think about the feeding of the 5,000.
Right.
People were amazed, sure, but they were amazed in the completely wrong way.
Right. They treated it like a spectacle.
Yeah.
Like a magic show.
Yeah, they treated it like a circus act. The argument the pastor makes here is that Jesus wasn't performing these miracles just to elicit some mere emotional reaction.
He didn't want just an audience.
Exactly. He wasn't looking to build a crowd of people who just gasp and go, wow, what an incredible display. Like, let's wait and see what trick he pulls off next.
Right.
The true goal of feeding those 5,000 people wasn't to touch their emotions or, secure a loyal fan club. The real goal was to engage their will, to prompt actual actionable obedience.
That makes me think about how we consume information today, like in our modern culture.
Oh, yeah.
It's like reading this really profound, life-changing self-help book just to get a quick dopamine hit of motivation.
Yep, the motivation high.
You know exactly what I mean. You close the book, you feel this massive rush of adrenaline, you tell all your friends how amazing the concepts are.
And then you go right back to living exactly the way you did before.
Exactly. You never actually change a single daily habit.
You're just treating the wisdom as entertainment rather than, enlightenment.
Wow, yeah. Entertainment versus enlightenment.
And there's a very strict line drawn here between those two concepts. Because entertainment touches your emotions, right? It makes you laugh, it makes you cry. Maybe you feel super inspired for an afternoon.
But it doesn't ask anything of you.
Right. Enlightenment actually demands something of your will. It requires a fundamental shift in how you operate in the real world.
Okay, so if the goal isn't just to get that emotional high, how do we actually spot the difference in real life? Like, what does it look like when someone's will is genuinely engaged versus just their feelings?
Well, the sermon actually divides humanity into two very distinct camps based on this exact question.
Okay.
First, you have the emotional responders. So, keeping with the water walking story, these are the individuals who just stay safely inside the boat.
Right, they don't get out.
No, they stay dry. They are deeply moved by the spectacle happening out on the water. I mean, they clap, they cheer, they might even weep with inspiration.
But they crucially do not move their feet.
Exactly. They take zero action.
Then you have the willful responders, the second camp. These are the ones who feel that exact same inspiration, but they actually channel it into a desire to step out of the boat, to take physical action.
Yeah.
And there is this brilliantly vivid anecdote in the message that illustrates this divide so perfectly.
Oh, the plaque on the wall. I love this story.
It's so good. So it involves this man visiting a house, and prominently displayed on the wall is this beautiful plaque featuring the famous quote, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Yeah, which is a total classic piece of decor. Like, you see variations of that sentiment in houses everywhere.
Everywhere. But the punchline here is that the family living in this specific house had completely abandoned their spiritual practices long ago.
Right.
They had stopped worshiping entirely. So you have this incredibly ironic kind of sad situation where the physical inanimate wall of the house was actually being more faithful to the message than the living, breathing people inside it.
It's brutal. But that imagery really gets at the danger of complacency, because it's not necessarily about, conscious, malicious hypocrisy.
It's more subtle than that.
Way more subtle. It's about treating faith, or honestly any core belief you hold dear, like a business license.
Break that down for me, the business license analogy.
Well, okay, so think about the mechanics of a business license. You fill out some paperwork, you put the certificate in a really nice frame, you hang it up on the wall, and maybe, once a year, you passively pay a small fee to renew it.
Right. But the license itself doesn't actually do the work.
Exactly. The piece of paper doesn't sweep the floors, it doesn't serve the customers, it doesn't run the business.
Wow. Yeah, so people who only engage their emotions, they're basically treating their deepest convictions like that piece of paper.
Precisely. They show up to a gathering, they feel the music, they hear the message, they renew their emotional high for the week, and then they just go home.
And the practical, day-to-day reality of their life remains entirely unaltered.
Right. But when your will is actually engaged, when you make that leap from entertainment to enlightenment, you don't just passively renew the license. You have to unlock the front door, turn on the lights, and actually start doing the hard work of running the shop.
But taking that action, right, actually opening the shop or stepping out of a perfectly secure boat onto a turbulent, storm-tossed sea, that requires an immense amount of trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if anyone is going to step out of their comfortable reality, they need to fundamentally understand the character of the one who is calling them out into the storm.
Yeah, you wouldn't just jump out for anyone.
Exactly. And that makes me think about this crucial moment that happens right before the water walking incident in the text. The whole situation with the temple tax.
Oh, yeah. That context is huge.
It completely reframes Peter's mindset.
Yeah.
It really explains why he had the psychological safety to take that massive risk later on.
That background story is so essential because it really reveals the mechanics of trust. Peter makes this highly impulsive mistake.
Classic Peter.
Right. These tax collectors approach him and ask if his teacher, Jesus, pays the temple tax. And Peter, without consulting anyone, without thinking through the logistics at all, just blurts out this affirmation.
He basically commits his leader to a financial obligation without even asking.
Exactly. He writes a verbal check that he personally has absolutely no way of cashing.
He creates a massive problem out of thin air.
And when Peter returns to the house, Jesus is already aware of the situation. And consider how, a typical human leader would handle this.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
A normal response would be to publicly rebuke him.
Yeah.
Humiliate him in front of the team for overstepping.
Yeah, or perhaps even worse, the leader might just leave the subordinate out to dry to deal with the consequences of their own mess.
You made the promise, you pay the tax.
Exactly. But Jesus does something entirely counterintuitive. He tells Peter to go fishing, promising that the first fish he catches will have a miraculous coin in its mouth.
Which is wild in itself.
It is. But the fascinating part isn't just the miracle. It's the specific instruction attached to it. Jesus tells Peter to use that coin to pay the tax for me and for you.
For me and for you. That is so powerful.
It really is. By saying that, Jesus is doing something profound with leadership and mentorship. I mean, he didn't owe that tax. He could have just provided enough for Peter to cover his own foolish mistake.
Right.
But by paying for both of them with one act, Jesus actively demonstrates that he shares a destiny with his followers. He basically absorbs Peter's failure and transforms it into a joint venture.
He makes them co-workers.
Yes. Co-workers with a deeply entwined shared history.
And when you look at how human experts and professionals usually operate today, it is the exact inverse of this.
Oh, totally.
Highly skilled individuals tend to hoard their specialized knowledge. If you are the only person in the building who knows how to execute a specific, highly technical job, you retain your power.
You're irreplaceable.
Exactly. You remain completely irreplaceable. You keep your secrets close to the vest so that everyone always has to come to you. It's basically job security maintained through obscurity.
Which is so toxic. And Jesus completely subverts that dynamic. He doesn't hoard his ultimate power, he actively distributes it.
But he doesn't want to be the only one out on the water showing off his divine capabilities while everyone else just watches in awe.
No, he wants his followers to do exactly what he does. He is transferring the capability to them, creating this massive psychological safety net. When a leader proves they will absorb your failures and actually share their power, your personal risk tolerance just skyrockets.
Which completely explains Peter's behavior on the boat. Because Peter has just experienced this shared destiny with the temple tax, he realizes Jesus actually wants to share his power.
Yeah.
But, and this is key, Peter doesn't just spontaneously hurl himself into the raging sea the second he spots Jesus.
No, he doesn't.
He does something highly specific and very calculated. He asks to be called out. He says, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water."
And this right here hits on the central thesis of the entire message. The absolute necessity of the call.
Okay, let's dig into that.
Because you do not need a divine call to do ordinary earthly things. You don't need a special mandate from the heavens to just walk on asphalt.
Right.
You don't need God to specifically call you to, get married or find a standard job. Those are standard human paths governed by standard human abilities.
God calls people to the humanly impossible. He calls them to walk on water.
Exactly. And the reason for that is deeply tied to human ego. If we only ever did what was completely within our natural abilities, we would just constantly rely on our own resumes.
Well, for sure. We'd boast about our unique skills, our past experiences, how strong we are.
Right. But when you are called to the impossible, your resume is utterly useless. Like, the power to actually succeed at the impossible isn't found in your leg muscles or your sheer willpower.
Where is it?
The power is actually embedded inside the call itself. When Jesus utters that single word, "come," the literal ability to walk on water is packed into that one command.
Wow. Okay, but, and this is a big but, if the power to do the impossible is literally embedded inside the call itself, why does Peter sink?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Because the story famously ends with him floundering and drowning in the waves. So it clearly isn't just this magical force field against failure. What is the actual mechanism happening there?
So the call is an invitation to power, but it is not an override of your own active participation. Accessing that embedded power requires absolute, unwavering focus.
Focus on the caller.
Right. When Peter stepped out, he walked successfully at first. The mechanism of failure only kicked in the exact fraction of a second. He took his eyes off the source of the call and began, analyzing his surroundings.
He looked at the wind.
He looked at the massive waves. He calculated the reality of the storm, and that logical calculation is what broke the connection. Keeping your eyes completely fixed on the source is the absolute, non-negotiable condition for the impossible to occur.
And it is so revealing to look at who didn't sink in that story.
Oh, this is the best part.
The critics. The ones who had plenty of time to judge Peter for losing his focus and falling into the freezing water. Where were they during this massive failure?
Sitting completely safe, dry, and secure inside the boat.
Exactly.
It's just a universal truth of human nature, really. It is always easiest to critique the form and the failures of the person in the arena when you are sitting comfortably in the bleachers.
Yeah. The people who stayed in the boat took zero risks. They didn't experience the terror of sinking, sure, but they also completely missed the experience of walking on water.
And the danger of choosing the bleachers over the arena is captured so perfectly in another story from the pastor's message. It's the anecdote about a company and a very loyal customer.
Oh, the Eddie story. I love this one.
It's so good. So this customer comes into this business regularly and always deals with a specific customer service representative named Eddie. And one day the customer walks in, looks around, and notices Eddie isn't at his desk.
So he asks the manager where Eddie is, and the manager plainly states, that Eddie doesn't work there anymore.
Right. And the customer, just making polite conversation, asks if the company is going to hire a replacement for Eddie's open spot.
And the manager gives this absolutely devastating reply. He says, no, because the spot being empty makes absolutely no difference.
It is such a brutal assessment of a person's contribution.
Ouch.
Right. The underlying implication is that Eddie was utterly useless to the ecosystem of that company. His physical presence added zero value, and his sudden absence caused zero disruption.
It is a terrifying way to live.
It really is. And the pastor's argument is that God wants to rid the church. And honestly, we can apply this psychological framework to literally any purposeful community or organization. He wants to rid it of eddies.
He wants to strip away the spectators who add no value, who just sit in the boat consuming resources without ever taking on an ounce of risk.
Exactly. Because why do communities naturally accumulate eddies in the first place? It's due to a systemic avoidance of risk. The sermon points to this larger structural issue, specifically targeting the concept of laity versus clergy. Yeah, this pervasive idea that there's a special, elevated class of holy professionals whose job it is to do all the difficult spiritual work, while the normal people, the laity, just sit in the pews and watch.
And the pastor views this divide as a fundamental failure of design.
A complete failure. There can be no spectators in this calling. Everyone must be an active participant.
You cannot just be the audience for someone else's miracles. You have to be willing to ask for your own call and then actually throw your legs over the side of the boat when that call finally comes.
But, discussing theology, risk, and all these fascinating anecdotes abstractly is one thing.
Sure.
It is very easy for any speaker to stand safely behind a podium and tell a crowd of people to embrace massive risk. What gives this particular message such immense gravity is that the pastor transitions from theoretical advice directly into his own lived reality.
Yeah, he gets very personal.
He really exposes the true cost and the ultimate reward of adopting this exact mindset.
He takes the audience back about 26 years, noting it was around 1992 in the Ethiopian calendar. He was in the city of Dire Dawa, actively preaching this exact same message.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. He was standing in front of a crowd, delivering the "If It Is You" sermon, boldly telling people not to be spectators. And right in the middle of delivering that message, the psychological weight of his own words just hit him.
He experienced this profound, completely inescapable personal conviction. He realized in real time that he was the one treating the promise like a business license.
Oh, man.
He was the guy with the motivational plaque on the wall, renewing his emotional high through preaching, but avoiding the ultimate willful action in his own private life.
And the stakes for him to actually step out of the boat at that moment were staggering. I mean, he had a wife, he had children depending on him, and he had exactly 50 birr to his name.
Which is practically nothing.
Right. To put that into perspective, 50 birr back then might barely cover a few days of basic necessities for a family. He was on the absolute brink of financial ruin.
But the conviction was so deep that he realized he could no longer preach about stepping out of the boat without physically doing it himself.
He had to do it.
So the very next week, after delivering that sermon, he quit his secular job to enter full-time ministry. He willingly stepped off the ledge into the storm.
And decades later, standing in front of his congregation, he is able to use his own life as the ultimate proof of concept. He notes that God provided for his family completely.
I love how he joked about that.
Yeah. He jokes that his kids never went on strike against him because they always had exactly what they needed. He proved that the caller is faithful when you step out for the impossible.
We've journeyed through some really intense psychological and spiritual terrain today.
We really have.
We started by examining that human tendency to seek a circus of mere emotion. Using profound wisdom just to get a dopamine hit without ever changing our habits.
And we looked at the extreme danger of becoming an eddy, a comfortable spectator sitting in the boat, adding absolutely no value to the community and spending all your time critiquing the people who are actually in the arena trying.
Right. And finally, we explored the terrifying necessity of waiting for and acting upon the call to the impossible. Understanding that you cannot rely on your resume, but must rely entirely on the power embedded in the call itself.
Maintaining absolute focus to keep from sinking.
Exactly.
So where does this leave you today? Take a hard look at your own surroundings. Are you sitting safely in the boat, comfortably critiquing those who are out there taking massive risks and, occasionally failing?
Or are you actively waiting for your own call?
Right, to do something that your resume, your logic, and your bank account say you shouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
Moving from an emotional response to a willful response is the difference between having a dusty plaque on your wall and actually running the shop.
The invitation here is to move from passive observation to active, dangerous participation in a shared destiny.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over today as you look at your own life. Think back to Peter sinking in those freezing waves. What if the very obstacles, the terrifying winds, or the massive distractions making you feel like you are sinking right now are actually the ultimate proof that you've successfully stepped out of the boat?
Wow.
Maybe you aren't failing at all. Maybe you just need to shift your gaze back to the reason you stepped out into the storm in the first place.